So on an average typical week, I will gamble about 4 to 5 times. So usually, most of it's around the weekend, because obviously most football games are played on the weekend. Most horse racing, in terms of actual well-known races, are on the week. Well, they're from Thursday to Sunday, so usually around 4 to 5 days. If I don't like the quality of the racing, then I don't really put any bets on horses, and so my betting volume is different for each one. For football, I only have do about 2 bets a day. For horses, usually, because obviously there are more horse races than there are football games in a given period of time, I will probably put about 4 to 5. Just depends on the quality of the racing. Particularly for football, I tend to have spreadsheets, that capture all the stats that have happened in previous meetings, because I always find, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you never want to rely too much on past games for current season things, because obviously new manager, new players can affect the bets in general. But I have found that you will spot 1 or 2 things that have been consistent across all the previous games that a team has played. So if Man City was playing Arsenal, particularly now, it would be good to look back through their previous games, because they have had the same managers for the last 4 or 5 years, and so the play styles wouldn't have changed too much. Part of it is just my natural inkling to like collecting stats, so I would have found a way to collect stats regardless whether I was betting or not. Sometimes I actually just collect the stats just for the fun of it. On the other hand, I do probably recognize some of it is trying to get a random event into something that is a certainty, and you can never be certain in any bets, because as a bettor, I'm not in charge of anything that happens, and no matter how many stats I collect, all it takes is a horse falling, a red card in a match, the manager, someone being ill in a match, or just different weather conditions, and all that research would have been out the window. So part of it is an over-reliance on research in order to compensate for a lack of research. So in order to not be like other people who are just placing bets randomly, I probably have stepped maybe one or 2 steps too far in the stats model, because obviously life is not stats. Sometimes context matters more. Any line that has blue on it, that would be any United game. The greyed out one would be Leeds or their away team. And so I tend to go through the last game that happened in the season, or the previous season, if they've played the previous season, particularly if they're the same managers. And so in the last game, in the first game of the season, there was 1 goal for United, 1 goal for Leeds. And so I've gone through the whole season and worked out Man United has scored in 30 out of 33 games, and we've conceded in 28 out of 33 games. With players, I tend to watch out for them having an exceptional game. So if they have an exceptional game, have 3-4 shots in a game, usually the same players are going to do the same thing. So I will scale it to go 1 down, particularly for shots. With fouls, I never go above 2. So I either look at how many times I've committed 2 fouls or 1 foul. Some players typically concede 2 fouls when they concede fouls. So if they've had a match where they fouled someone, they will usually be on 2 fouls, 3 fouls. Whereas other players, they might not get as many in a game, but they're almost guaranteed to foul someone. So Goodmanson, player for Leeds, has had 90% of the games he's played, he's been fouled. And if you take out the first month of the Premier League, he's been fouled in every game since. And so typically, for some reason, the betting companies still give you good odds on Goodmanson to be fouled, no matter whether he's come back from injury or whatever. And so in the recent game against United, he actually got fouled 3 times, which matches what happened in the previous game as well. But it is a bit of a false sense of security. Again, like I said, because at the end of the day, they have like millions and millions of people doing the same analysis I'm doing. And to be able to find the little edge where they've actually got it wrong, usually it will take a lot of sitting down. It basically takes full-time dedication, which most people will never do. So really and truly, it's a false sense of security, but it does nudge it a bit more in your favor. So usually before a game, I'll spend at least an hour before each game that I intend to bet on. So if I'm betting on three games, because let's say it's 12 o'clock start, 3 o'clock start, 5 o'clock start, 8 o'clock. Between those four, I would spend at least 4 hours, obviously, preparing for each one. If it's a very big game, I will disregard some of the other games, and I could spend 3 4 hours going through little tidbits and stats. Actually, contrary to what most people might feel, after I win, I typically never feel the need to bet again because I've won, and in my head, I'm thinking I'll take my win over the betting company any day and leave it as is. With losses, it's 50-50. So if I've spent enough time doing research on a bet and I've got what I think is good value and everything else, and the bet doesn't come through, I don't really feel sad about that because it's variance. There's always going to be variance in betting. You physically cannot win every bet you bet on. So as long as it's a good bet, I don't really feel. I'll accept it and roll on and be like, it is what it is. I'll bet on my next chosen one. Every now and again, I will bet on something I haven't done too much research on. And when I lose that, those feelings of needing to win that money back, those are very strong and sometimes very hard to stop. But betting in that sort of mindset almost guarantees you lose again, which makes you even more sad once you've double lost. Usually by then, once I've lost twice in a row, I will never bet after that. So if I ever lose two bets in a row in a given day, I call it quits immediately. But the fact that I'm betting to win back money I've lost is something that probably happens to a lot of people and probably is not a very good thing. Obviously, it is an anxious feeling, but I think it's more frustration, to be honest. Because I feel like people usually only do or get into that state if your bet has just lost. So if maybe one thing went wrong, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe you bet on a certain amount of shots on target, for example, and you've seen the team hit the post 4 times. In that moment, I don't think it's necessarily anxiety. I think it's actually frustration that you did the right thing, you got the right thing, and sort of the world or events turn their back on you. And so you feel like, you sort of feel a sort of frustration where you're like, oh, I can beat them. If I do the same thing, this time I win because I can't lose twice in a row, surely. But more often than not, your second time you've done it won't be anywhere near as researched as your first time. So I think it's a lot of frustration rather than necessarily than pure anxiety.